For more than 100 years, Everest has been the ultimate test of human ambition. But, for every story of triumph, there's a shadow. A story of a climber who went up and never made it home. Then, in 2024, the mountain gave up one of its oldest secrets, the remains of a climber, lost for a century. But just as one story found a long-lost piece, a new tragedy was beginning. This is the story of two climbers, separated by a century, but linked by the same deadly mountain. A story that brings a legendary mystery into the light and reminds us all that on Everest, the past is never really gone. Mount Everest, or Chomolungma, the mother goddess of the world. The name alone evokes images of breathtaking beauty, of ice-fluted ridges against a perfect blue sky. But it has another, much darker nickname, the world's highest graveyard. Once you get above 8,000 meters or 26,000 feet, you enter a place where the human body literally starts to die. They call it the death zone. The air pressure is so low that even with bottled oxygen your body is shutting down with every breath. Frostbite, hypothermia, and deadly swelling in the brain become critical risks. It's a place of brutal math, where every step is a gamble, and the mountain always has the final say. For decades it's held on to its secrets, preserving the bodies of those who challenged it and lost. They became silent, frozen warnings to anyone who followed. But now, the mountain is starting to talk. As the glaciers melt, they're giving up the ghosts of Everest. Let's go back to 1924. The world was still healing from the Great War. The North and South Poles had been reached, and the British Empire, looking to reclaim some national prestige, set its sights on the third pole, the summit of Everest. The face of this ambition was George Mallory, a 38-year-old schoolteacher and one of Britain's most famous climbers. He was obsessed, having already been on 2 previous expeditions. When a reporter asked him why he wanted to climb Everest, he gave the 3 most famous words in mountaineering: because it's there. With him on the final push was Andrew "Sandy" Irvine, a 22-year-old engineering student. He was an engineering whiz, and Mallory was counting on him to keep their primitive and finicky oxygen tanks working. On the morning of June 8, 1924, Mallory and Irvine pushed off from their high camp, climbing up into the clouds. A fellow climber saw them late that afternoon, just 2 tiny black dots moving up the northeast ridge, going strong for the top, before the clouds swallowed them whole. They were never seen alive again. Their disappearance became mountaineering's greatest mystery. Did they actually make it to the summit 29 years before Edmund Hillary and Tenzing Norgay's confirmed climb in 1953? For 75 years, the world had no idea. Then, in 1999, an expedition made an incredible discovery: the perfectly preserved body of George Mallory at 26,760 feet. The injuries pointed to a bad fall, and the rope around his waist suggested he and Irvine were together when it happened. But a key clue only deepened the mystery. The photo of his wife, which Mallory had promised to leave at the summit, wasn't on him. Did that mean he'd made it? But where was Irvine? And more importantly, where was the camera he was carrying, the one that might hold a picture from the top? For another 25 years, the mystery held. And then, in September 2024, a National Geographic team stumbled on something that would add a crucial new chapter. Emerging from the melting central Rongbuk Glacier was a leather hobnailed boot. Inside there was a foot and a wool sock. As team leader Jimmy Chin lifted the sock, he saw a name tag, E.A.C. Irvine. It was a monumental discovery. Irvine's remains were found thousands of feet below where Mallory's body was, likely carried down by the glacier's slow grind over a century. While the camera that could solve the summit question is still missing, finding Irvine's remains provides a kind of closure to a story that's fascinated people for 100 years. It's a poignant end to a century of speculation, a story kept on ice, finally revealed by a changing world. But just as the ice was giving up one of its oldest secrets, Everest was claiming a new one. In the spring of 2024, Daniel Patterson, a 40-year-old from the UK, was on the mountain. His Instagram feed was a chronicle of his journey, full of posts about his love for the mountains, a place he called his happiest. On May 21, 2024 at 4:40 a.m., Patterson and his 23-year-old guide, Pastenji Sherpa, reached the summit. It was a lifelong dream come true, but on Everest the summit is only the halfway point. Coming down is often the most dangerous part of the climb. Climbers are exhausted and the altitude impairs their judgment. As Patterson and Pastenji were descending near the infamous Hillary Step, disaster struck. Eyewitnesses reported a cornice, an overhanging shelf of hardened snow, snapped off right under them. The collapse sent both men plunging down the Kangshung face, a remote and terrifyingly steep wall of rock and ice on the Tibetan side. The Kangshung face is the least climbed and most dangerous side of Everest. George Mallory himself called it an impossible route back in 1921. It's constantly threatened by avalanches. Falling onto the Kangshung face is pretty much a death sentence. A search was launched, but the location made any rescue attempt incredibly dangerous and nearly impossible. After days of searching with no sign of them, the operation had to be called off. Daniel Patterson and Tenji Sherpa were declared missing, presumed dead. Their bodies, like so many others, were reclaimed by the mountain. 100 years, it's a huge gap in time between George Mallory's final climb and Daniel Patterson's. Mallory and Irvine had tweed jackets and leather boots. Patterson had advanced weather forecasts, lightweight gear, and a high-tech oxygen system. He was even connected to the world by a satellite phone. And yet, for all that technology, the mountain hasn't changed. The wind is still hurricane force, the cold is still absolute, and gravity is still unforgiving. The stories of Irvine and Patterson, a century apart, are tragically linked by the same simple danger, a fall. The fact that Irvine's remains were found at all, revealed by a melting glacier, is a powerful reminder of our changing planet. The same climate change that's uncovering history is also making the mountain more unstable. Warmer temperatures weaken ice falls and cornices, making the objective risks even greater for today's climbers. In fact, a ledge near the Hillary Step, the same area where Patterson disappeared, also collapsed during the 2024 season, another sign of the mountain's shifting geology. The two stories force a difficult truth. We can improve our gear and our forecasts, but we can never engineer away the risk. Everest will always have the final word. It holds its secrets and sometimes it shares them, but always on its own terms. Irvine's boot emerging from the ice adds a new piece to an old mystery. Patterson's disappearance is a reminder that the mountain can create new mysteries at any moment. The 2024 climbing season was deadly. 8 people lost their lives, including Daniel Patterson and Tenji Sherpa. Their story is a fresh wound, a raw reminder of the price of ambition on the world's highest peak. At the same time, finding Sandy Irvine's remains brought a new chapter to one of Everest's most enduring ghost stories. 2 men, from 2 different centuries, their fates now woven into the legend of the mountain. They show the 2 faces of Everest, the triumph and the tragedy, the mystery and the harsh reality. So why do they do it? Why risk everything for just a few minutes on top of the world? Mallory probably said it best. Because it's there. It's a challenge to the human spirit, a test of our absolute limits. It's a search for something that can only be found in the thin air where the sky meets the summit. The mountain holds its secrets, old and new. It kept Sandy Irvine's story frozen for a century. Now it holds Daniel Patterson's. And it leaves the rest of us with a question that echoes across the decades. Is the dream of standing on top of the world worth the risk of never coming down? The stories of Everest are an incredible look at the human drive for adventure and the sheer power of nature. If you found this mix of history and modern tragedy compelling, make sure to subscribe for more stories like this, and let us know in the comments. What do you think drives people to take these kinds of risks?